Alright, so we have officially dodged the first impact of the Quicksilver videos. Hope y'all enjoyed those. But now we're going to take on Path 3 here, and we're going to start with Apocalypse versus Nightcrawler. So for those of you who watched Path 1, one thing that I said there was that it was foolish of me, and it cost me items, that I even started to ramp Apocalypse's evade counter on Spider-Ham. And that is because Spider-Ham is much newer and comes from a time when designers realized that evasion alone is not enough of a threat for high-skilled players. Which is why you see something like this, where even though Nightcrawler is gaining power every time he evades, this is a very safe place to ramp if you are just careful. Additionally, Nightcrawler does a lot of his damage through crits, and Apocalypse has crit resistance and a massive health pool, so there's quite a bit of extra protection there. Whereas, for comparison, Spider-Ham goes unblockable immediately after he evades you, which makes it much, much more difficult to just catch yourself after something goes wrong. So this is always the hardest part, and there we go. So thankfully, the enhanced evade was really helping us out there. That's always the hardest part of ramping Apocalypse's evade counter, is getting the last couple triggers because you're preventing so many of them. But thankfully, this Nightcrawler fight makes the evade chance so high that it actually helps when you're using somebody like Apocalypse, because you can get all the way to that 100% mark, and then you just turn the whole thing off. And after this point, we're just dealing with somebody where it'll hurt if we get hit, but there is basically no other defensive challenge. And so we're just ramping Apocalypse slowly but surely, and we know he's going to do enough damage, because this is a rank 4 Apocalypse. He blocks very well. He has incredible long-form damage output. I believe we go up to the Special 3, because it just increases everything. It means that we take less block damage by doubling the weakness. It means we're doing less damage when we're not hitting him by doubling the potency of the poison and the degen. At this point, you understand how Apocalypse works. Note that we are not applying the concussion, because Force of Will itself, part of the way it is coded is as an immunity to the concussion effect, and so that just never applied in the first place. So that does slow Apocalypse down a little bit, because we are only getting the physical burst damage on his specials from 3 debuffs instead of 4. But it's still Apocalypse versus a mutant. At 4 charges, it's going to be totally fine. As I've said in earlier fights, this is one where we spam Special 1 instead of Special 2, because although the Special 2 has more hits, it has fewer than double the hits of the Special 1, meaning that the Special 1 is more hits per bar of power used, and therefore significantly better in a long fight once you are ramped, even without the Strife synergy. If we did have the Strife synergy, which I know a lot of people are using, then the Special 1 is even better because it ramps you faster and just does truly absurd levels of damage. So Nightcrawler was stingy a few times in here. He's thankfully no longer gaining power since we're turning off all of his evades. That 864 is a constant amount of damage in the background, so over 1700 damage per second is definitely helping us. But like I said, Apocalypse doesn't really have a special advantage here other than turning off the evade, the same way that Nightcrawler doesn't really have a special advantage other than his chance to evade. So this is just kind of a long, slow, boring fight from here. It is worth noting that if you were one of those people who brought like Archangel, or Strife for that matter, since I mentioned him, and decided to make someone a horseman earlier on, then this right here on this Nightcrawler is one of the best possible places to ramp Apocalypse back up. Because you would start with 2 genetic code, and because Nightcrawler's a mutant, you would still place both debuffs. It would be slower than what we're currently seeing here, because you would only have 2 prowess instead of 4, but you would end the fight with 3 genetic code, and then the Spider-Gwen immediately after this would give you 4, and so that's a really easy way to ramp back up after burning those charges. Anyway, there we go. You can see me being paranoid there and going, oh god, did I forget to record that? Thankfully it was on. And we move on to Spider-Gwen. So, this actually is a little bit trickier because we have one eye open and window of opportunity stun. So this means that unlike the last fight, we can't safely stun into block. We can't find our openings that way, and therefore I believe that it is possible to heavy counter in a few places, like especially after her special 2, and maybe after her heavy, but to be completely blunt, I forgot to duel for that before this fight. And so because it's not safe to parry heavy or to hit into her block and then heavy, notice that there, even though the stun shield was on cooldown, I didn't hit twice into her block because the poison damage would have been reflected back on us and I didn't want to deal with that. Because it's somewhat more difficult to land heavies in this fight, I'm just spamming special ones the entire time. Like, long term, the best way to do this is definitely to, I'm pretty sure a heavy would have landed right there after that special 2. It would have refreshed those, and then I could have done the same thing I did in the Nightcrawler fight, build all the way up to the special 2, double the potency of our weakness, poison, and degen, make them all permanent. Or, honestly, what I probably would have done is I would have just run straight for the special 3, immediately after the first special 1 to lock in the 2, because there's always the chance that we have trouble pushing her to the special 2, and the last thing we want to do is to get greedy, get all 3 debuffs up, and then have all 3 of them fall off because she threw a few special 1s in a row instead of a special 2. But in a perfect world, if you're comfortable with those heavy counters, you definitely could fully ramp and play this more like the Nightcrawler fight, and it would go extremely well for you. I just did not duel for that before this, and I knew that a 5-charge Spider-Gwen would delete me pretty quickly, even through Apocalypse's health and crit resistance, if I was wrong on that spacing, and so I just chose not to test it here, because that would be one more revive that I'm really hoping not to use. Alright, so with that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and let this play out, because it's pretty... what's the word I'm looking for? Homogeneous from here on out. And I will catch y'all for the next one. Alright, so there we go. 200 and... how many is this going to be with the special one? Effectively 258 hits, but 263 total. And Spider-Gwen is down. Just long, slow, very simple fight. Then we move on to Domino. Apocalypse can, of course, take this. There are a number of different ways you could do this. But come on. Nimrod is the mutant-killing machine. He's incredible against Domino because he's immune to her ability accuracy nonsense. He's great on Power Shield because it's going to boost his passive shocks. This is, in my opinion, the way to go. Now, the power drain can work against you if it keeps her from throwing specials and therefore not feeding, and therefore keeps her from feeding Matador. You could, yeah, I mean, that's just something that can work against you, but it really doesn't matter. Because, watch, I'm making sure to bait the special 1 here, because Matador is not based on how many bars of power she uses, it's based on how many specials she uses. And therefore, baiting the special 1s just means we get more power that way. But this right there is why I'm not really concerned about the power drain, because we get to our first special 2, and it does half of her health and damage. There's just nothing to worry about here. If we had been a little more on top of our parries while we were in Titan mode, then we could have had a slightly higher attack rating when we threw that special 2, and we could have done the full half health or more and been on track to do this in 2 special 2s, but that's not something that is worth losing any sleep over. Especially because she will go lucky, and you don't really want to end your combos in light attacks, which is normally what I do when I'm not dealing with an opponent that has a chance to evade. That's normally what I do to try and make sure that I spend as much time as possible in between specials in Titan mode. As long as I'm not an Eradicate anyway. I try to spend as much time as possible in Titan mode because that gives me as many armor ups as possible, which means that even though in between specials I will not be hitting as hard, when I finally do throw the specials, I will hit much harder. And so that's a trade-off that I take every time when I play Nimrod. So 2 special 2s and just a tickle from a special 1, Domino is down, nice and easy. So now we have the fight that I brought Spider-Man 2099 for. There are a number of different ways to do this. The last time I took Gauntlet, I actually just ran in here with Apocalypse because I didn't bring another true counter. And I got him about 80% down in the first life and then was just able to finish him after that. But I will be the first to say there's a certain amount of luck in Apocalypse doing that well against Mojo, because these nodes on him can just be awful. I did it last time because I didn't really want to mess around with a 5-star Archangel, which was all I had. It's still all I have. But this time, luckily, I do have a rank 3 Spider-Man 2099. And he's just an amazing Mojo counter. This is not Alliance War, this is not the boss node, there's no True Strike, so if he hits me, it's going to hurt. And if I eat a special attack, I probably will die. But short of that, we are completely avoiding his degen, and we get this constant healing from the stagger debuffs, feeding our willpower. And so, as long as I play it right, as long as I do not eat a special 2 or a special 3 or multiple combos, this should be a very simple fight. Because now that I have the Wither up from my special 2, now instead of gaining power when he completes prompts, he's going to lose power. I'm not super used to playing Miguel yet, to be perfectly honest. He went to rank 3... I think less than 24 hours before I went into Gauntlet. But I know the basics because I've sent him quite a bit as an officer. Strands in my battle group, currently taking a break from Alliance War, was one of the very first adopters of Spider-Man 2099 in Alliance War, had one of the first rank 4s, and so I have seen quite a bit of it. But a lot of the fancier stuff, I don't think you necessarily need here. I am just blocking most of the special 2. You notice that I evade the first beam and the very last one just to keep block damage down. Doesn't really matter, like I said. The staggers are feeding willpower, and therefore I will heal back up. But the big thing is to just try and trigger decks as much as possible. As you all know, I'm not always on top of it, but sometimes I'll block most of a special one to just try and make sure that I dex the very last hit of it to do that. I'm trying to keep my Wither up. I'm trying to keep a single exhaustion up at all times. I could stack up to 5, but I'm not really staying on top of that. I think ultimately that would have been best if I was trying to stay completely on top of the power control. Something to watch for next time. I do make a point of going for my special 3 here, not because I need the slow, but because the next time that I throw my special 2, the slow counts as 3 unique debuffs for his burst damage, and so because this is a very long fight, at least for my, I think this is a SIG 20 Spider-Man 2099, so I'm not going to have as much damage from the ruptures as somebody else might. Because this fight's going to take a long time, I want to keep that slow up because I need all of the damage I can get from the special 2. I also threw a special 1 for the same reason. I had done that earlier in the fight, but it fell off, so I threw it again here because I want the physical vulnerabilities up. It increases the burst damage from the special 2 on its own by reducing his physical resistance, of course, but it's also another unique debuff and therefore more damage. So this is pretty much exactly what I'm hoping for as I'm going for the special 2. Like I said right there, sometimes I will block a fair chunk of the special 1 just so that I can know for sure I dodged the very last hit of it. There you go. And now we're going to try and build up to another special 2. We are dealing with a lot of special 1s in the corner here. It probably would be good for me to, like I said, stack additional exhaustions, but that was not something that I focused on. Again, that's okay because we have these staggers on us helping us out with willpower. The other reason it's okay that I forgot to mention until now is that lately I have been running the Inequity Mastery maxed, and because I have more than 6 debuffs on my opponent, Mojo's attack rating is being reduced by 36%, more than a third, which is really helping how healthy I am after blocking all those special 1s. So it hasn't come into play in all of my fights. It's been at least somewhat helpful in all the Apocalypse ones because he puts quite a few debuffs on the opponent. But in this fight in particular, I probably have like 90% or more uptime on the maximum damage reduction, and so it's just really helping keep this super safe. So we have 2 Withers up now, so when he completes a prompt, you can see his power just drop. We're doing our best to keep everything paused. We really want to hold on to everything, but when I can, I am applying ruptures, because my hope is that I'll just take him over 1 more bar. That didn't quite do it. He really does have a ton of health. And then, good. I got 1 last pause. And then, I forget if the burst of the special 2 kills him. Okay, the special 2 does. And there we go. So not a quick fight. 174 hits is quite a while. Would have gone faster if my Miguel were higher SIG. But that's something that I may do in the future. He definitely crushed the fight. Like, I ended that at literally a full yellow bar, right? So, I could have played it better, but the result was about as good as it could possibly be. Very, very happy that I invested in him and brought him on my team, because I do think that Mojo is one of the scariest fights in this whole thing. There are a lot of characters that can take it, but if the RNG works against you, that fight cascades like nothing else as he starts gaining charges. So yeah, very, very happy with that. But funnily enough, the single worst fight for me in Gauntlet last time was this one. Because I was using Warlock, who has an incredibly short dashback, and so I probably ate, I don't know, 20 special 1s from Immortal Abomination. It's when I started calling his special 1 the Pillbug of Death, because it just got me so many times. It was extremely frustrating. I think I spent 7 revives on that fight alone. And so this time I wanted to make sure that I brought a better poison immune. This fight is why I brought Nimrod more than Weapon X and more than Domino, because Apocalypse could have handled those. But Nimrod is here for this one, because even though he's not as hard a counter for I-Bomb, he's not going to ramp as fast, it's not a mutant, he is poison immune, he doesn't rely on power gain, he doesn't rely on, anything that the Petrify is going to interfere with. This is just a really solid matchup, and you're also seeing, because Nimrod has now defeated a couple mutants throughout the fight, you're seeing the Kitty Pryde synergy help us out here. So I reacted poorly to missing a parry there, took a hit, not ideal. Nimrod has plenty of health left. If I need to, I can also push to the special 3. That's a really important thing that I think people sometimes forget in long fights with Nimrod, but it's something that I really had kind of beaten into me in the Eternity of Pain fight against, what was that? I believe Crossbones, because you really needed the regen, even though it only is missing health. So we don't care about the poison aura, of course, because we are immune. We didn't really enjoy the block damage from the special 2, but thankfully the armors are helping. And all we're doing here is building back up to another special 2. Now we throw it when we're in Eradicate. Notice how we gain armor ups as we throw the special. That's the Kitty synergy helping us out. And just like that, we are suddenly winning the HP race. I don't think I healed before this because I know how good Nimrod is for this fight. Again, not the fastest thing in the world. I know that from Battlegrounds, but I also know just how darn safe it is. So we're trying to make sure that we have 10 charges before we throw this. Again, we always want to throw these specials in Eradicate if we possibly can. Also lets us parry immediately off the bat, even with the full damage potential of getting the attack rating boost from having multiple armor ups. We also gain even more armor ups because we get the benefits of both modes. That's why Eradicate is so important. You do your damage and you keep ramping. Go for the special one here. I arguably could have gone for it earlier. It's often something that I like to do with Nimrod. I think in general people don't do it enough. But I-Bomb is being stingy enough in this fight, and the Disorient is causing me enough problems with my ramp that I don't think you need to do it here, and I don't think it's helping me all that much. I do land this, and it kills, but it also would have killed without the energy vulnerability. Otherwise, you can do that fight. But for me, given how that went last time when I was using Warlock, I am completely ecstatic with how well that went. And so that's Path 3. Thank you all for continuing to watch these videos. I really appreciate it. I know that I was not quick on Gauntlet this time in particular, but I'm really glad that I did record my run this time. It really is a fantastic piece of content. I enjoy it so much. I love all the champions that I brought on this team, and it's a blast really stretching them to their limits. So if you're still here, I'm guessing that you're enjoying this, and I'm very glad to have you along for the ride. Path 4 should drop tomorrow, I believe. I don't think I have anything else coming up or anything else I'm waiting on. And I will see y'all then with the rewards. Until then, thanks again so much for watching, and take care.